I told you I was going to be equal about sharing information. So let's get into this case out of Georgia. Georgia versus Anthony James Scott. Anthony Scott is currently standing trial for a second time for a car crash that unalived two teenagers in 2015. Yes, almost 10 years ago. Scott, a former state trooper turned mayor, is charged with 2 counts of second degree unaliving by vehicle, 2 counts of serious injury by vehicle, violation of oath by police officer, speeding, and reckless driving. The prosecution is alleging that Scott was speeding while driving when he crashed into a vehicle with 4 people inside. Additionally, the state is arguing that Scott was driving at a speed between 80 and 90 miles per hour in a 55 miles per hour zone, despite the weather conditions and the roads being wet and it had rain all day and there being limited visibility because the accident occurred at 11:30 at night. Kylie, a victim of the case, was ejected from the vehicle. Ben and Dylan both suffered skull fractures and memory loss, and Isabella Chinchilla was also a victim in this case. At the time of the crash, Scott was not responding to a call, and there was no apparent emergency. He did not have his lights and sirens on. Now, the defense is saying the driver, Dylan, is responsible for the accident because he made a left-hand turn without yielding or using a turn signal on a rainy night. Additionally, the defense is stating that there was alcohol or some presence of alcohol at the scene. However, Dylan, the driver, was tested and no alcohol was found in his system. So even if there was alcohol, if Dylan wasn't under the influence, could you really make that argument? Let's see. Keep in mind, this is the second time Scott is standing trial for these allegations. The first trial occurred in May of 2019. That ended in a mistrial when the defense attorney discovered that the state failed to accurately tell where Kylie was sitting in the car when the accident occurred. You had opening statements today, and you had a couple of witnesses to testify. The issue in this case for me is proximate cause. Is whether or not Scott can be held responsible for the unaliving of 2 teenagers when he was driving recklessly and at a high rate of speed, although the victim's car failed to yield while making a left-hand turn before the accident occurred. So basically, the state is saying Scott should have known, and it's foreseeable that driving at 80 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone, you should have seen or foresaw, based on your training, knowledge, and experience, an accident was likely to happen, and there was no emergency at that time. The defense is saying no. It's the driver Dylan's fault because he failed to obey a traffic sign, and that resulted in the collision. You tell me what you think.